Hey, this is John. Today I just want to talk about some recommended reading lists for if you want to teach yourself investment analysis. So there's basically two things that you can focus on. You can either focus on quant or non-quant. I would recommend you tend to focus on fundamental investing though, instead of quant investing or quantitative investing for two reasons. One, if you don't have the math background, you're competing with other people that have a math background. And two, if you have the math background, you're competing against firms with greater resources and on speed. And on both of those, you'll lose. So, recommend you focus on fundamental investing. The CFA textbooks do not cover quant investing, not effectively, anyways. They will take you through like a sequence of things, but just up to maybe, I think, like basic Garch models for time series. I don't think you're going to walk out of the quant segment with the ability to make new models. That's what I'm saying. Now, the only problem with using this for if you're just trying to get an understanding of the investment process and trying to learn about it, is that it is 9,000 pages, but it is very well structured and it's self-contained and it covers all the things that you'd need to know and probably more than you'd want to. So, don't necessarily recommend this just on that grounds, unless you're a professional. Then I think you should cover this. Okay. Now, suppose you're not a professional and you just want to cover it. Well, this is generally the sequence that I'd recommend. Now, to just kind of comment on this a little bit, but the main goal is just kind of reducing the overall page count to something much more manageable that you can maybe cover in a few months. So with Sham statistics, if you have any university course on statistics, I don't think you have to cover this. This is just like very basic statistics, covering up to, I think, like just a little bit past regression models. But I covered like all of this basic statistics at university, so I'm not even really 100% sure what the best intro statistics book is. Now, with the economics of money, banking, and finance, this book is very introductory. You don't really have to have any background in economics to read this, and I think it gets you pretty far in terms of the material that you cover similarly in the CFA curriculum. So, focusing largely on monetary and fiscal policy, for example, and the drivers of the financial market. And economics is very important for the asset allocation process in particular, and understanding how the values of investments move under different market conditions. And then, being able to form investment theses thereafter. So economics is pretty important. You can go and expand on this with something like Romer's book, but to read Romer's book effectively, you do need more of a math background, probably at least Calc 1 and 2. So if you cover Spivak's calculus, for example, 1, 2, then you should be able to cover Romer's macroeconomics. Okay, then there's investment valuation. From Damodaran, largely self-contained. You can interject with a financial statement analysis book like that from Wiley. That's only about 400 pages, so it wouldn't take it wouldn't be a very large detour, but I do think it's unnecessary. So I took it out. Damodaran's book does go over, I think, all of the necessary financial statement analysis concepts that you need, and if you do need to, if you have any confusion, right, while you're reading the book, and you probably will, if this is your first time going through stuff like this or on this topic, then just Google it, right? What is a intangible asset, if that trips you up, or what things are included under intangible assets, etc. Right? Okay, but yeah, and I think he goes over all the necessary accounting principles as well. So yeah, okay. Now with portfolio management theory and practice, you can swap this out for other portfolio management books, but I wanted to focus on one that was more focused on the theoretical aspects, because then you can broadly apply that to other things. So this is one that I settled on out for this recommendation. But you can pick other ones, and other ones will also cover a lot of material, but they may or may not focus on the theoretical aspects as much. So yeah. But to be totally honest, I think pretty much any statistics book, intro will work. Pretty much like most intro economics books will also work, and you can swap those out, but I think this is probably the most focused one that you can pick. And that covers quite a bit of stuff. And then most portfolio management books are also pretty interchangeable. This one is kind of special for investment valuations, and its theory, given that it's so broad and the author is very well respected. You can go with more technical practitioners' handbooks, but I don't think that's necessarily helpful anyways. So yeah, okay. So there's for that. That's like fundamental investing, and I think this will give you a pretty good idea of the process and everything. Okay, now let's say you wanted to focus on quant stuff. Well, basically the idea is to go through a proof book. This is the recommended one, but there's other proof books that you can pick. And really, like, one of the nice things about picking Daniel Vellman's book is that he does go through a lot of stuff up to covering some things you'd cover in at the very beginning of your analysis textbooks, like function theory and like the natural and real numbers, which you don't necessarily need to understand proofs. I mean, really, there's only I think 4 chapters dedicated to new proofing techniques, and the rest are applying them in different settings, like in the function space, for example. Okay, but this is pretty fundamental to covering the rest. So start here. Then do SPOEX calculus. Now, you can swap this out for other calculus books, but most other calculus books are pretty boring in that they focus way too much on these very specific formulae and not enough on the concepts. So I think you'll just focus too much on memorizing things that way. So this is what I'd recommend instead. Okay. Then you have, but you will want to go through Daniel Vellman's book, and sooner or later you have to go through a proof book anyways, because for example, as I'm going to get to here, and also an analysis very proof based, you're going to need proofs for a second semester in linear algebra / second book in linear algebra, because that's all going to be proof based. Now, you can use Serge Lang's books. I think that's fine. You can also swap this out for Friedberg, Insel's, and Spence's, and I think you can read that without a linear algebra background, to be honest. I think, I know that it's been suggested that it needs to be a second course. I don't really think so, though, because they start off with, every chapter does include some computational aspects to it. And so I think as long as you have some background in proof, I think you probably can get through Friedberg, Insel, and Spence's book just as well. So, but both of those would be pretty much the same total length, and they cover basically the exact same topics. So, but these are the ones that I'd recommend because they just more clearly separate the two, and the difficulty progression is probably going to be more linear. Okay. Then for analysis, I'd recommend Amon and Escher's books, and the reason why I recommend this is because it takes you pretty much through everything. You will get some exposure to other math topics like abstract algebra at the outset with things like group and ring theory, but it does take you all the way up to measure theory and some functional analysis. So this will really give you a lot of coverage of analysis. I'd recommend before you read Amon and Escher's analysis books that you go through Tao's analysis books, and the reason for that is because Amon and Escher's books are very dense. They are self-contained, but they're very dense, and some of the topics, like trying to read through the section on natural numbers in Amon and Escher's book, is pretty hard, whereas in Tao's analysis, by comparison, it's very easy. So I think, with that said, that you should kind of view like Tao's analysis books 1 and 2 as a way to gain a quick conceptual explanation of the topics, acting sort of like an appetizer in analysis first, get through some less dense materials, get some additional practice with proofing, and then I think it's going to be a lot more comfortable to go through Amon and Escher's books. Now, you can swap these out for other analysis books, and maybe this is even a little bit overkill, but you do want to get up to at least some measure theory, so I think this is probably the best way to streamline yourself up to measure theory and, in a more structured way. So that's why I'd recommend these books. Additionally, it should probably also be said that I believe you don't technically have to do calculus to go through analysis, which I think is what they do in Europe, which I only know because these are German analysis books, and I was looking, so that's how I found that out, I guess. But I do think it probably is useful to have some of the intuitions from calculus about things like convergence of limits, for example. I think that is going to help in analysis, so I would say probably still do calculus first, but maybe it's not strictly necessary. Okay. After this, you should find it pretty feasible to cover all of statistics. You do want proofs, of course, for going through this book, as you'll note. And Daniel Vellman's book is going to provide, Daniel Vellman and Serge Lang's books should provide you with all of the discrete mathematics that you need to go through the book. So yeah. Now you can supplement or add additionally maybe this Intro to Probability book, but you don't have to. But this might make it easier, and it might make it easier to understand this book. Now, and maybe you could swap out all of statistics for a longer mathematical statistics book if for whatever reason you find this too dense. But that will add a lot of time, and I don't think it's really necessary. I think this book is really done, really well done condensation of most statistics concepts that you're going to need. So yeah, very good book. Very much proof-based as well. Okay, and then you can move on to mathematical finance, or at least you should be able to move on to mathematical finance at this point by Eberlein and Carlson. And that's about 700 pages, and this book is also going to provide you with additional context on things like Markov processes, for example. So you start moving along a little faster with this one. And also, other things like generally covers stochastic calculus in the book, and then, other things like equity models thereafter. So that's probably a good way to enter start the quant finance theory. Now, from there, if you wanted to expand on either of these topics, you can cover other aspects of portfolio management. If you wanted to expand into other areas, I would say mostly focusing on things like asset allocation are the best way to go. And so with that said, then I would also suggest probably reading up then on financial statement analysis, reading more on economic theory, and perhaps on like some business strategy, in which case Routledge has a very short book on business strategy that I think is pretty good. You check that out. It's just called Business Strategy and Competitive Advantage. And then the other routes to go are like more into portfolio construction and portfolio strategies. So that's what you can generally branch off from here. Now with the mathematical finance stuff, you can go literally into more mathematical finance, but most of your payoff is probably going to be from like studying more math first, and then going and studying other areas. But yeah, that's generally how math works. I mean, it's not like mathematical finance is separated from math. So you would probably have to study more math if you wanted to expand into other areas. But yeah. Okay, cool. All right. I hope that helped. If you find this useful for whatever reason, please like and subscribe. Otherwise, take care. Bye.